辛苦
哎，
辛苦，嗯，
累了。好，
好
好，我希望我没有看起来太，我看起来应该没有太走神。我希望我没有。
，three, two, one, go. Hello, Tracy. Here we are.
嗨，
Okay, so first of all, it's a great pleasure
yeah,
talking to you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, except for it's a little bit late for me. It's like 11-ish p.m.,
Yeah,
but it's fine.
so yeah, it's very tiring, isn't it? Okay, we are going to talk about something today. First of all, I'd like to, both of us make a brief self-introduction. So start from you, Tracy.
Hi everyone, I'm Tracy. Usually I start my video by saying hola, hola, bienvenidas y bienvenidos a mi canal, because I make videos in learning Spanish, on learning Spanish, learning English, and a bunch of other, my school vlogs. For those of you who are not very familiar with me, I graduated from NYU Shanghai, and now I am a student of East Asian Studies at University of Toronto. I'm a first year master's student. Yeah, that's about me.
Yeah, that's
Your
great.
turn.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Sarah. As the same with Tracy, I'm a video maker, but I couldn't speak Spanish at the moment, so I'm an English video maker. And apart from that, I'm a student from Sichuan International Studies University. But I'm now currently in my gap year, and next year I'm going to Australia to Newcastle University studying English and writing. So I think that's the basic information about me. Okay, Tracy. So I think we can then talk about how we happen to, get to know each other on the internet.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think just one day when I was checking my Bilibili, Saro's video just popped up on my front page, and I was like, huh, articulation, that sounds interesting. I've always been very interested in expressing one's ideas about articulation. So I just like didn't hesitate to actually watch his video, and I didn't help myself summarizing his points and then making another video based on his ideas, in response to him.
Yeah, sure. So it's like it's also an interesting experience on my side. So a friend of mine talked to me at one point on WeChat, saying to me that, oh, here's a link about one video maker that I love quite much. This is a girl who made English and Spanish video, and she talked about you. I think, oh, hold on a sec. She talked about me. We don't know each other at the moment, so I think, oh, I can take a look. Then I click your video, and oh, we talk about something similar. So it turns out that you watch my video, so you have some sort of reflection as well as some more thinking, I would say, about this question, which is articulation and self-expression, especially in our age where we find it somehow difficult to be precise in our language, how to organize our thinking and things like that. So I think that is some sort of commonality shared between us. Okay, so now let's get into, I would say, the questions raised by our followers. We asked our followers what kind of question they want to ask us, and we have several questions they raised to us. The first question I'd like to ask you, Tracy, is how do you practice your pronunciation? Or do you think pronunciation is important?
I think pronunciation is important in a way that it helps people understand what you're talking about, get your message across. Of course, pronunciation can be different when you are speaking with a different accent in English or in Spanish. It could sound differently, but I think as long as you are trying to get your pronunciation clearly, so from my perspective, I think there is no point in attaching too much importance to the accent itself, because I got asked a lot about, English accent and stuff as well from making videos in English. I think sometimes people are just too stressed out about having the perfect accent, and I think that's not necessary to have. And then there are other times when I get comments from people who are learning Spanish that, oh, I don't know how to do the road R. I can't just learn Spanish. And I always say to them, it's only one of the many letters it has, the language has. It doesn't make sense that you're not going to start learning a language just because of this one letter you can't pronounce. Accent is not as important as pronunciation.
Yeah, it's really
That's
beside
the
the
point I'm
point,
trying to.
isn't it? It's periphery. So I think, well, you draw a distinction between pronunciation and accent. Pronunciation has something to do with our clarity. So if you make your pronunciation standardized, then the probability that your message will going to be get across will be higher. And I think that's the very precondition for you to have any further communication with other people. So clarity really matters. But accent is another thing. I think in terms of accent, because we talked about that before. I know that there is Spanish spoken in South America and the Spanish said in Spain. So, in terms of how we can pronounce our pronunciation, I think we can agree on the fact that imitation matters and repetition matters. So, once you do some shadow reading, you practice
Mm.
your pronunciation after some native speaker, I think you will be getting better and better. So, what do you say?
Yeah, just to give an example, sometimes when people say they're going to improve their pronunciation by watching TV dramas, they spend much of the effort on going along with the plots, then really taking the effort to making the effort to that are being pronounced in the show. So what I do is usually I will watch one time for the plot, and then I do another time for the pronunciation. Sometimes it's a catchy phrase that you can use in other settings. It comes in very handy. Then you can pause it and then try to get very familiarized with that term. Or other times when you try to do some listening practice and you don't understand what they're talking about, you can slow it down and then try to listen to it once again, just to get more familiarized with how things are pronounced.
Yeah, so I think when you're trying to know something via the channel of English or Spanish, you learn this language much faster because you are not treating the language
Mm.
per se as the ultimate aim. You're treating that as an intermediary structure where you can know something that you don't know at the moment. For example, as you said, when you're trying to follow a plot in a TV series, you don't
Mm.
give her about what the English is about or what the subtitle is about, but you know some slang, some phrase naturally. So I think we can now move on to, language study in a much broader sense. So do you have any habits or methods that you're going to share with us in your language study? No matter it's Spanish or English.
Yeah, I think one way that everyone can see is that I make videos of me talking in Spanish. A year ago, I made this video of studying styles or study methods, or like the study methods are divided into three categories: the visual, the auditory, and then the gymnastics. So the three different kinds of styles. And then I tested myself. I found out that maybe the auditory studying style work better for me. So I really realized, hey, when I'm learning languages, if I speak, I actually remember things more clearly. If I write it on a piece of paper, probably not so much because, well, it's language learning. You have to speak, you have to listen to things, right? And because there are so many other people who are better at Spanish than me, they can point out, hey, you got this part wrong. And I'm able to, learn from those comments and then correct it in my next video so that the new memory is created.
Yeah, so I think that the first thing is that when we are making videos, it's a way, first of all, of practicing our oral speaking, and second of all, you can always have some people around you correct your mistakes. That's really something because you know that we are not perfect, not in the least. So if you have someone who can offer you the healthy criticism that you see fit, you can always make progress with regard to that. And I think in terms of our linguistic acquisition, the first phase is always listening. So that's really matters. And then second of all, maybe you can read because when we read, you can acquire information maybe faster if you can really read. So these two things are equally important in my estimation. Well, on my side, I think that I was somehow similar to you in the first place because when I was first getting my hands on English, I suppose that I listen a lot, especially when I'm deeply fond of a speaker like Barack Obama, who's a very powerful and eloquent speaker. I can always mimic what he said. But later on, I think,
Mm.
what about generate some of my own individual thinking? and engage in my narrative. I think that's what they're trying. So I think in senior high school, I participate in some speech competition and like the 21st century national English speaking competition, where there's a title called impromptu speech, right? Because you have to deliver
Yeah.
thoughts promptly. And in that sense, you push yourself to the degree that's possible to make yourself clear and sharp in the shortest time
Yeah.
span. Yeah, I think that is in which you a process in which you get yourself to be a more autonomous speaker without the input of outside. So apart from making videos, do you have any other habits in your language study?
I like to, when I'm learning a new language, I like to make everything in my environment in that language. So, for example, I can show you this. It's very absurd. I even have my phone like completely set up to Spanish. Sometimes I took a screenshot of the map and I sent to my friend saying, "Hey, I'm gonna arrive there in 5 minutes." And then they were like, "Wait, your map is in Spanish?" I'm like, "Yeah, actually, my whole phone is in Spanish." I talked about this mother tongue thing in my previous video when those words are first learned not in your mother tongue language. DDL, this wouldn't be something. Um, DDL will be your mother tongue because when you first got to see this word, it's in English.
Yeah. Okay. So I subscribe to your points. You made several points. It's very hard for me to summarize them. I will try it. The first thing is that I think language environment, we all agree, matters a lot. So if you're trying to saturate yourself with the language environment that you're going to learn, I think you're going to succeed. For example, you talk about the setting of your phone and make all of them Spanish, English, and maybe that will be helpful. And apart from that, I think you talk about something in terms of linguistics, how we acquire language, source language and target language. When we are learning a second language, it's like we are treating Chinese as the source language. Then your first language is always Chinese. But what about think about this way? Just treat Spanish or English as your first language. How we manage to do that? Well, if you want to get your hands on some information, let the channel be Spanish or English. Then maybe the first impression that jumps to your mind is Spanish and English. And in that sense, it will help a lot. So I think, well, it's really something because I haven't thought about that before. Thanks for enlightening me. Okay.
You should try it. You should try it.
I should try it. I should try it. I'm planning to maybe learn a third language, maybe Spanish. You can help me along.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so in terms of language study, I think we can talk about one other thing. I think what what language study mean to you? What does that mean to you? Studying a new language, studying Spanish, English. What does that mean to you?
Hmm. I think it's always a new channel for getting information. A lot of things, say, especially when you're doing history. So, for example, I specialize in Chinese history. Especially, I study Qing history a lot, and then I only look at the sources in classical Chinese. And that makes me pretty limited in my perspective. And here comes in another scholar who specialized in the same period, but this scholar knows Manchu language and probably also knows Mongolian language. These two are similar. This scholar would just come up with so many more interesting arguments that I'm not gonna be able to make. So I think with one more language, you're definitely going to get more sources that you can make conclusion. You can make different conclusions, different claims. So that's why next semester, actually, I'm planning to take Manchu language class, hoping to learn a little bit Manchu, which might give me a different perspective when I look at Qing history or whatever. So even the news can be different from even the news on China can be different from the Chinese news on itself.
Yeah, I think I can deeply sympathetic with your idea because I'm also sort of interested in history study. I know perfectly well that there's a distinction, say, between facts and opinion. But the facts that
Yes.
we gathered somehow across time is somehow biased to some
Bye.
degree. And this sort of bias and prejudice is, I would say, generated because of our limitation in our culture and language barrier. So I talked about at
Mm,
one point about Babel Tower. So people are in a situation where they are unable to understand each other. Even for those who speak the same language, they can't understand
mm,
each other. Let alone when we're speaking different languages and thereby in different cultures. So in that sense, you are trying to bridge the gap and you are trying to gain new perspective for that matter. And not only that, we can then generate our own thinking and have our own spiritual endeavor in history, in philosophy, for that matter. To put many words in short, I think we can agree on the fact that language help us gain perspective. And
mm.
and I always say that one more thing, which is language help us to have the ability, or let's say the desire to communicate across barriers, because we know perfectly well that people cannot understand each other fully. There's no two people in the world who can understand each other entirely, even the beloved ones. But there's always an attempt to bridge the gap between people who love each other, who hate each other even, and who are
Yeah.
so-called enemies. So starting a language in that sense is a very romantic thing to try to understand each other, to reach out as we do now.
I think I have two things to add on to that. The first one is, right, there is a distinction between facts and opinions, but I just feel like there isn't much factual, existence at all. A lot of things are just opinions, even though they are masked as facts.
Mhm.
Especially history, when we read all these things in textbooks, we tend to think it's what happened. But, in choosing what to tell in the textbook is also a subjective act. It's also selecting out of other things, and it's choosing this specific event to tell you. That is something based on opinion as well. So I just think we need to be very careful about those things. Yes. So you mentioned that when we learn different languages, we are able to communicate with each other. And specifically, I think there is a difference when you are communicating with that person in their language instead of a second language for you both. For example, I have a bunch of Latin American friends at school. English will be our second language. And when we communicate in English, it's different from when I try to use Spanish to communicate with them. First, Spanish might convey more messages or more nuances when they use their mother tongue. It's just different. And secondly, when I try to use their language, it shows something, right? In my attempt to speak Spanish, they feel respect. They feel my respect, my love for them, and they are able to open up even more. So I think that's something really magical about, using other people's languages.
Yeah, if you speak a language that they understand, it goes into their head. But if you
Mm.
speak their language, it goes to their hearts. That is the difference. So
Yeah.
so that's showing your respect. That's showing your attempt to really identify with them. That's really something because I think in terms of psychology, people love attention more than anything else. And attention
Mm.
should be carefully organized. The attention is composed of love, truth, compassion, and respect. And
Yeah.
the first point is also very interesting. The factual element of our study is very limited, as you said. And I agree. And part of it is because they are biasly selected, they are carefully selected or intentionally selected. So we can see the world as, I would say, a set of facts. But we look at the world through our perception. And when we see it through our perception, we carefully select that. So when you're trying to
Mm.
learn a new language, maybe you can get new perspective to see the world through different perception.
And
So
you try to find a balance between all these different perspectives provided by different languages. And then you just have a more nuanced kind of understanding of the thing. And then you will be less likely to actually argue with someone because the things that you believe in aren't really firm enough, aren't really absolute things to say like this is true, because you know there isn't such thing as the absolute truth. There might be relative truth, you know.
Yeah, only fools who believe that the only thing that they know is they are absolutely right. Because we know that the most wise men always tend to think that the most certain thing is uncertainty. We always can get our hands on more. And the bigger of the circle of our known territory, the bigger contact we have with the unknown. The unknown territory is very, very big, right? So yes, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Mm. Okay, I think that's a good place to stop, right?
Yeah.
So I think we have several more questions that we're going to cover in our next video, but we will stop here. So first of all, thank you, Tracy, for talking to me. I think it's an immense pleasure on my side. And second of all, for all our followers and fans, please subscribe to us both if you may. And me is Cyril Xiang Yang, and Tracy is Tut Tracy. So I think that's the wrap up today. Nice talking to you. See ya.
Bye. We'll see you pretty soon next time. We're going to talk about career and passion in life. If you have more questions to ask us, feel free to comment down below so that we will gather all your questions for our upcoming video, and we'll be expecting you for the upcoming video as well. Bye bye.
See ya.